Joshua, we were talking earlier about how things that can make a general contractor or concrete sub angry at a concrete company and cause communication difficulties and those sort of things. And one of the things that came up in our conversation was yield. So yield complaints. Well, we know cracking, low strength, some of those things, service issues. We know those things are all points of contention. You and I, as we've mentioned, have always been sort of proponents of the better communication equals better projects. So,
always. So the quicker you can inform a general contractor or design professional that there's something going on, the better it's going to be. So you're more reactive than reactive.
So proactive, rather than reactive.
Yes. It's been a long day.
Hey, it has, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm yielding.
Oh goodness, that's great. Yeah. So yield complaints. What do we even mean by that?
The complaints or what it is?
What it is. I mean, I have
been on a job site where a contractor started screaming and yelling he was shorted 3 yards,
yes,
4 yards, 5 yards, or whatever it is, and that really comes down to.
I think we're thinking about the same job site.
We are, but we'll get that later.
Okay.
So what I've seen is if you take a wall, which is a lot easier to deal with, you measure the wall width, height, length.
Yep.
Do some quick calculations, throw it in there, it gives you amount of yardage. So you take your width in feet.
Mm-hmm.
So take your inches, divide by 12, make it a foot. Height, so 8, 10 feet, whatever it is. Length.
Yeah.
Multiply those together, divide by 27 gives you cubic yardage, and it should tell you fairly close to how much concrete to order.
Yep.
And as your contractor, if you order 20 yards and you get 2 trucks at 10 yards each and you're not fill the wall up, you got a yield problem.
Yes.
And they don't like that.
No, they don't. So how do you deal with that? What do we do whenever that comes through? That we start scrambling, don't we? We try to figure out what's happening.
Well, it depends on how it was. If the testing company is being asked to check yield, so when they do their unit weight, they're also going to go ahead and look at the batch tickets and get a yield on it.
You just showed your age.
I know.
It's fresh density now, Josh. Whatever. Not unit weight.
It's still unit weight to me. It always will be, always has been. It's fresh density, but it's still unit weight.
All right. You're exactly right. But yes, please continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, but you can do the calculations based on your batch weights and your unit weight to find out how close to 27 you are. If you're off, then as a responsible testing agency, you want to call the concrete producer and go, hey, I'm getting this as my yield.
Yep.
You need to check into some things. And it could be based on some, then they can go check their scales.
Yes.
They can check your air percentage, make sure that it's not doing it. There's
that's
a couple different things.
That's a great point. Yeah, one of the most common yield complaints that I would get when I was in the ready mix business was because air had dropped, and we designed the mix on 5 or 6% air, and then they're getting 3s and 4s. Well, you literally are losing 1, 2, 3% of your volume in air. So that's an easy fix in most cases.
And that's also why a responsible testing company should be calling up and go, hey, I know you put this mix design up on a 6% air, I'm getting 5. It still might be within tolerance, but it lets you know that, hey, there's some things here going on that you might want to double check or make sure you're good with so you don't have a yield issue down the road.
The most common solution or the most common culprit to the problem I've found in my years was that the dimensions of the placement were off compared to what they thought, what the concrete finisher or
so such as you get out there and it's supposed to be a 4-inch thick slab, but really it's 4.5 inches.
Yes. So a 1/2 inch over a 200 by 200 slab, for instance, would give
several
you yards of concrete that is short. Now, I have experienced some real problems with scales at the plant and those kind of things as well, but that brings us back to the story that we have to tell because we hinted at it early.
We did. So
on.
Brent and I were both part of a project. It was a big box store.
Yeah.
We'll not name what it was, but there was some high-end concrete being placed.
Yes.
And as they were placing it out, they realized that we're not getting as much as we are, and everybody's scrambling to figure out what it does. I mean, and for the most part, if you're testing a lot of concrete, you know that some of that concrete is going there. But there's still not a whole lot on it. But when all of a sudden you're short 4 or 5 yards.
There was an 8 cubic yard callback load that was ordered in this particular contractor did a great job with his base material, had his grade down using laser screed. Everything was spot on, and they bring this 8-yard load of concrete out, and I was the QC guy for the ready mix company, and it doesn't even pour half of the 8 yards
Right.
that was left in the slab, and all of a sudden I've got a GC who, he was a little short guy, and he's just jawing at me, and his hard hat's about that far from my face, and I'm going, man, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me either. And then he's pointing his finger and saying, Brent, you calculated this. And I'm, okay. And then up walks this guy in a hard hat that I knew,
Assistant
superintendent, with just, I will never forget, this is 20 years ago. And he says, hey guys, what are y'all arguing about? And we tell him, and he goes, oh, you mean this truck? And I said, well, yeah, this truck. And he goes, well, did he tell you that I stopped him at the road for duck banks and took about 4 yards off of him to pour some duck banks before he got in here? And I said, no. So sometimes it's as easy an answer as somebody else on the job took some of the concrete for another reason before the guy actually got to the slab placement or whatever. So,
which oddly goes back to something I think we've said a couple of times. Communication is
communication is key, and I still give that assistant superintendent a hard time about that every time I see him 20 years later.
So you're still communicating.
I am still communicating, yes. Busting his chops for that funny little incident, but it wasn't funny when I was getting chewed out for sure. But thank you so much for joining us today. Yield complaints are something that there's usually a pretty simple answer to. It just takes a little digging.
A little digging.
Yeah. You see what I did there?
Yeah, I did. So if your subgrade's a little low, it was a little digging. Yeah. I got you. I'm there with you.
So please like, subscribe, and all
comment,
those
questions, whatever. We're here till next video.
Thank you so much.